Hello, everyone. We are live. Talk on Movie Talks. I am here with Ethan. Ethan, How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing quite well, actually.
I am glad to hear that. I know recently, just from checking out your letterbox, you watched Terrifier 1 and 2, and I'm hoping you're not.
Yes.
I hope you're not too upset at me for leading you down that path. If my opinion led you down that path at all.
Absolutely not. I'm not upset about that. I did when I watched the first Terrifier because Terrifier 2 released, and a lot of people were talking about how gory it was, and I was like, all right, I'll watch Terrifier 2, but first I'm gonna watch the first one. Um, Terrible movie, but Um, I think there's some really fun moments. I think it's an hour and 20 minutes long, and I think the second half could be completely cut out, and it would be fine. It's just a lot of it. They stretched it. They really stretched it.
Now, which one did you prefer of the bunch, I guess? Did you like one more or two? I watched
Me
one.
too.
You like two more? Okay.
Yeah.
I watched one like long enough ago to where I really don't know if my memory is the greatest. I think I might. They both have different strengths, like completely different strengths. I think the brevity of one, because you said one is an hour 20, right?
Yeah.
I think that helped. I think two, I liked that they were like it. They fully explored the concept in two, but the
hmm
length, it didn't aid it in a lot of ways, and I think the bad acting in the second one was much more noticeable. But you have a fresher perspective, so was it as noticeable in the first one?
I'll be honest. I actually think the elongation of like how the director loves to just stretch out scenes and these two movies are so stretched out. I actually felt that less in the sequel. I felt that so much more in the original.
So I guess it's just kind of it has something to do with the director, which if I'm not mistaken, the director is also the special effects guy. If I
Yeah, I believe he's the director, the writer, the producer, and the editor and the special effects artist.
So, give a little bit of background for people watching this episode, how much of an undertaking that is, because you have done short films and you've probably filled all, if not most, of those roles yourself. And I would imagine
Yeah,
it's quite exhausting to do that
yeah.
for a feature length film. I can't imagine how exhausting that would be.
Uh, I mean, when you're doing a short film like that, and you have just yourself and a couple of people, and the only thing you're not doing is acting in it, then it's just you got. I guess you got to just go through that process because you're going through. There's pre-process. There's the pre-production. There's production and there's post-production. I'm part of all three of those when it comes to making the short films. Oddly enough, this director, I believe his name is Damien Leone.
Mhm.
He is part of pre-production. He's part of production, and he's part of post-production. So he's doing all that.
So, I mean, you would have to imagine this was exactly the vision that he had going into this film, since he touched on every aspect of the film.
One might call him an auteur.
So, how did you rate the movies, and what were some of your biggest gripes with the movies?
I'd give the first one like a 1.5 out of 5. It's quite bad, even for its but it's a low budget. But it's that second half is so stretched out. You could fit all of that gore into 40 minutes, and it would be a fun little short little gory movie. But he had to elongate it so much. Um, Terrifier 2 is such a fascinating movie to me. It's also really terrible, but there's the director had all this money from the first Terrifier, and he said, "You know what? Screw it. I'm going to make this movie like crazy. I'm going to have so many ideas put in this film, so many ideas in the storyline, not go anywhere with them." and and it's just this movie is epic without being epic. Like it's trying to be this epic thing, but there's like five people in the total in the movie because they had to elongate the movie. I felt it less because it was more so the editing was kind of elongating it, but my word, it's an anomaly to me. I think the gore effects are also much better here. I mean, like the infamous moment in Terrifier 1.
Hmm.
I didn't feel like much from it because it was such a fake looking dummy
Hmm.
that they used. But the second one had some nice animatronics, like some of the blood squibs. But I was actually laughing the entire time watching Terrifier 2. So I give it a 5 out of 10 because it's just a roller coaster of different, varying opinions.
Yeah, I mean, it pretty much covers the gamut as far as people's reactions to it. I think like bona fide, just absolute gore lovers got what they came for. That like kind of 80s fantastical element, I think I don't know if they played into it enough to fully satiate that audience. I don't know if you felt that way too.
Definitely not. They they didn't they did not like follow through with any ideas here. There's just no idea that's fully enveloped, except for the part where the dad, for some reason, knew that the whole thing was going to happen, and you probably knew from the get go that um, she would chop Art the Clown's head off. Spoilers, by the way, spoilers. Um, oh god, there's so many amazing moments that I love it, but I also hate it at the same time.
Yeah, I was really really mixed. I came into that movie wanting to love it. I think I rated the first one a 3 out of 5, and I think it was like it was one of those things where I remembered it as like a high 3 and really didn't remember any of the negatives. And like the second one, as I was watching it, the weaknesses were just very glaring, and
Mhm.
you pinpointed some of the major issues, like as far as the script goes, and it's that it has all this time to like breathe life into these little subplots that they put on the table, and then they just don't explore it. And
Yeah,
so
it's
it's like, why?
it's trying to be sorry.
You're good. You're no, go ahead.
It's trying to be this insane, epic, fast-paced like horror film, like gorehound film, but it's trying to be like The Thing. It's trying to be a slow burn. It's also trying to be a slow burn, and it's like if you condense it down into 80 minutes, you have a movie. You have a really fun, cool movie with some nice gore and some funny bad acting. But they just he elongates it so much. It's I will say camera work is a lot better. I actually there is some sweeping shots that I did enjoy here.
Yeah. And I will say, and I think this even applies to the first one too. I got to give a shout out to the actor who played Art the Clown because
Yes.
I mean it was almost like a two-person show. I thought the protagonist like held up her role relatively good, and then I thought Art the Clown like excelled within his role. But
Yeah.
I don't know if you felt as strongly, and I'm not trying to be too harsh, but I thought the mother in the movie was hilariously bad, or
Oh, she
just
was.
very poorly written. One of the
Yeah.
two.
She's so terrible. Nothing about her character really works. There's one legitimately good, well written scene, and it's where the mother's on the phone with the daughter, and and then like she says, "I love you," and I don't think I say that enough. And that was like a genuinely like well written moment emotionally,
Hmm.
and then oh, she's dead. There's no like redeeming of the mother. She gets her face blown off by a shotgun that was sawed off so much that I don't even think it would work anymore.
Yeah. Oh man, that was like it was the way it was written. It was hilarious, and I don't know. Part of me has to, just give them the benefit of the doubt and hope that was what they were going for there. That they're like,
Yeah,
wouldn't
but
that be funny to have this emotional moment and then just cut it off immediately afterwards?
yeah, but yeah, the mother's acting is the worst acting of the movie, which is saying quite a lot because the main girl's friend, she was really bad. The giraffe boy, giraffe boy, as I like to call him because he's got a super long neck. It's the main protagonist's brother. He's really bad.
His neck was like just extraordinarily long.
Yeah. Yeah.
I thought they were gonna do something with that too. Like
Yeah.
try to do like something like a gore thing involving his neck because that is literally the first thing you notice about this character. Is
This kid's neck is so long.
yeah, I do like if they come out with a third one, I feel like I'm not gonna be able to resist the just to see what they come out with though, because
Either.
despite what went wrong, there's something about when a director is just like I'm gonna just go off. You know what I mean? I'm going crazy
Yeah.
with this one. That made it interesting the whole way through. Where you're like, I kind of want to see what they're actually gonna make of this.
Yeah, and it's not a far stretch to say that it could get another sequel because this sequel got a lot of money. It budget 250,000. Box office was 11.1 million.
Damn. Yeah. I mean, that's got to be that's what you want to hit on, right? When you can like
Sure.
10x your money or more, you know.
Yeah.
So I want to just at the beginning give you a shout out for your channel. Check out Film Junkie. He's got great analysis, and he has his short films on YouTube as well, which you should definitely check out. So he has that directorial background from his short films, and we're gonna start out this episode, which is going to include top directors and top films. So it's a little bit of a different format for this one, and I hope you guys enjoy it. We're gonna have some just candid discussion about these directors and films. And Ethan, I wanted you to start out because I'm looking at your list right now, and I quite like it. And if I guess if we want to do top 10 and start from 10.
Yeah. Sure. This is probably going to be a little bit of a normie list, a very basic list. Um, but my number 10 is Martin Scorsese. Um, I mean, there's not really much I could say about Scorsese. He is one of the best directors who ever lived. I've seen all of his movies. I think a couple of them are masterpieces. He's always great. He's obviously always great at the gangster milieu,
Hmm.
but he's also great when it comes to character studies and like just you focusing on these characters and how they interact with others. Like my favorite movie of his is Taxi Driver. That's a brilliant character study that's as deep as it is incredibly entertaining.
So Scorsese, like before I started recording and using Letterbox and like actually tracking all the films I've seen, he was always the person I would say when I was asked who's your favorite director, and like Goodfellas, The Departed, those gangster films really made that up. And
Mhm.
you know, he's someone who I still have to watch more of because even some of his best films I have yet to see. But I think when it comes to gangster films, there's really, to my knowledge, it's a two-man race, and you have to either go Scorsese or Coppola if you want
Yeah.
to look at Godfather as like the best portrayal of it. But his ability to
Mhm.
capture that is just pretty much almost completely unmatched, I would say.
Absolutely. There's no doubt about it. I mean, Coppola made three gangster movies, two of them being the best of all time, but Scorsese has a couple, and they're at worst they're great, like incredibly well crafted, incredibly well made gangster movies. Goodfellas is uh, Goodfellas is a masterpiece. There's no doubt about it. Casino is also phenomenal. Um, I guess I prefer his more um, intimate movies, more his more intimate character portraits, like Taxi Driver, as also Raging Bull. One of my favorites from him, and one that I don't think many people would consider one of their favorites, is Bringing Out the Dead with Nicolas Cage. It is such a great portrait of being like a paramedic in New York.
One of my like biggest positive attributes I could, you know, pair with Scorsese is he seems to be one of the kings as far as pacing his movies. And is that one of the big, like what are some of the big, I guess, attributes that you would attribute to Scorsese?
Pacing, definitely. He can make a long movie feel much shorter than it is. The Irishman, when I watched it when it came out on Netflix, and it did not feel like 3.5 hours at all. It really felt like he didn't elongate anything. All of it felt so necessary.
I feel the same way with Wolf of Wall Street. It's like a 3 hour movie,
Mm,
and it really feels shorter than a lot of movies that are shorter than it, which is like that's
yeah,
what you're going for. Have something that's
yeah,
just so enticing, and you just want to keep watching.
absolutely. I cannot wait for Killers of the Flower Moon.
Is that coming out in 2023, or does it look like it's going to be even later than that?
I think it's 2023. It seems like it.
I mean, it with age, like, and you would know better than I because I have yet to see The Irishman. I think the latest Scorsese film that I watched was Wolf of Wall Street, but he has not had a downturn in his career yet. I think we could agree on.
Well, there's a couple of movies that are lesser known that I would say falter for me, which is why he's at number 10 because I prefer a director to have 10 movies and all of them be at least pretty good, from pretty good to amazing, than to have a director with like 30 movies and like half of them are good, half of them are bad to mediocre to bad. Scorsese's not that bad. I'd say like five, six, maybe seven of them are kind of mediocre of the 25 that he's made. But he has made a couple of stinkers. I'd say his weakest is probably his second feature, which is Boxcar Bertha. That's just kind of a weak movie.
Okay. So consistency is a huge kind of factor into your director rating.
Yes, consistency.
Ethan, your number 9 is a director that we have done an episode on together. He is an English gentleman.
Yes, sir.
He is Mike Lee.
Mike Lee. Yes. Um, he's probably the newest addition on this list. Naked, I watched for the first time like maybe 9 months ago. Um, and I really, really liked it. And then I watched it. I came back to it, watched it again, and I loved it so much more. And then I watched it a third time, and I said, "This is one of the best movies I've ever seen in my life."
That
Just
that character is so carefully crafted that
yeah,
it's absolutely magical what he's able to do with that central character.
yeah, yeah. And then you have his other masterpiece, Secrets and Lies,
Yes.
which is a lot more of an emotional movie. And as far as like Mike Lee is so good at building like relationships in movies, especially in Secrets and Lies, where the whole idea is it's this family who they're very distant from each other, and it takes like a very hard set of realizations that the characters reveal to each other at the end of the movie that just gosh, it's such a masterpiece. Secrets and Lies is also amazing.
Yeah, that film it's one of the best examples of taking a very promising, creative premise and exploring it to its fullest extent, I think.
Yes, absolutely. And then you have his other movies. I really like Meantime a lot. It's a very drab, very dry movie with two early performances from Gary Oldman and Tim Roth, who are both great in the movie. I really like that movie just because it's just such a very dark compared to the to like Secrets and Lies or Life is Sweet, where it's more comparable to Naked, which is very soaked in this depraved sort of cynical mindset.
It seems like maybe his greatest strength is his ability to flesh out and portray complex characters. Is
Yes.
that you think his greatest strength? And if not, do you have any other ones that come to mind to you?
Dialogue is obviously one great trait of his. I know some people don't like Johnny's rants in Naked. I love them. I think they're so well written, and David Thewlis is amazing when he goes on those rants. I think that the dialogue gives that character so much personality.
Yeah, I think the dialogue is like half of what makes that character so enigmatic and charismatic too. So I guess some people probably just don't like monologues in general, and it might change their cinematic experience. But for me, I think it made it in the film Naked.
Yeah, definitely.
Your number 8, Ethan, is another director that we have done an episode on. Would you like to introduce your number 8?
Yes, he is one of the kings of the art house genre. He is the legendary Ingmar Bergman.
I cannot say enough good things about Bergman. And
Yeah,
the films that we watched, Persona was one that was such a mind shattering film. It was
yeah,
tremendous.
absolutely. Looking back on Bergman, I guess I feel just so drawn to his world and his viewpoints because I've watched a lot more Bergman films than I thought I did. I think I've watched like 12 or 13 Bergman movies,
Hmm.
and quite a bit of them I would consider just masterful, just so well made. Like you said, Persona is my favorite of his movies. One of the best films ever made in my eyes. I've never seen a movie so deep and complex and so well rooted in its themes and so masterfully directed to where every scene feels completely and utterly necessary. All 80 minutes were used to tell this very dark and very emotionally deep rooted story. And for that, I'd consider it a near flawless masterpiece.
One strength, no, well, he has multiple strengths. I think the strongest among them, though, is he seems to be a master of psychology and presenting these very deep thoughts onto film, and just his portrayal of these psychological thrillers or dramas, familiar dramas are just it's hard to beat, honestly.
Yeah. I call Ingmar Bergman the master of dramatic tension. He knows how to implement the camera in ways that just make every dramatic scene feel so much more impactful than it already felt. Cries and Whispers is another masterpiece of his, featuring one of the greatest performances in cinematic history, portrayed by Harriet Anderson as Agnes, the woman dying of cancer. When she goes into her involuntary pain attacks, it is the most gut wrenching, horrifying, one of the most gut wrenching, horrifying things that I've ever seen in a movie. She should have won 5 Oscars for her performance.
I love the freedom that he gave his actors and actresses as well, because they seem to be able to really excel on screen through his direction, or in films that he directed rather.
Yeah, definitely.
Your number 7, Ethan, is a director that I have unfortunately not watched any films by yet. There are quite a few that are high on my list, and it is one of two that I have not seen any of their films yet. But I'm going to let you explain the greatness of Wim Wenders.
Yes, Wim Wenders is a very similar career path to Werner Herzog, which you I feel like I connect you with Herzog the most.
I love
But
Herzog.
yeah, Herzog is wonderful. But Wim Wenders to me is has made some of the most beautiful films ever. When it comes to doing films with cinematographer Robbie Mueller, Paris, Texas is visually alone one of the most beautiful films I've ever seen. Harry Dean Stanton is just he's amazing. He was amazing. Rest in peace. And just allowing him to convey emotions just with less of a voice and more of a face is the reason why I love movies. Is just this slow burn movie known as Paris, Texas. And it's one up there with my favorites of all time. I love his movie I love his Road trilogy as a whole. Alice in the Cities is a great Paper Moon kind of ripoff. It's like the German version of Peter Bogdanovich's Paper Moon, which I'm surprised I didn't put Peter Bogdanovich up there. He's probably in the honorable mentions. But I love Kings of the Road, which is the third Road trilogy movie. He with the Road trilogy, he definitely knows how to make a fantastic art house road film.
Yes, and if I'm not mistaken, did he kind of start directing as a documentarian?
Yeah, yeah, very again similar to Herzog. He is also a documentarian. He is more known for his documentary films of the modern era. In 1999, he made a movie called Buena Vista Social Club, which got nominated for Best Documentarian at the Best Documentary Feature at the Oscars. And in 2011, he directed a movie called Pina, which is a movie about Pina Bausch, who was a German dance choreographer, because she had passed away 2 years before. And that documentary has also netted him another Oscar nomination. I think he's more known in the U.S. as a documentarian, but his feature films are I think honestly are better.
The number six director that you have, um, you can say a lot about him. And you can boil him down to three letters that are often thrown around to signify him. It is PTA, aka Paul Thomas Anderson, who I also love as well. And how do you feel about him? What were your favorite movies by him, and some strengths that you clearly identify by watching him?
Oh boy, number 6 and number 5 were really tough to differentiate. I love both the number 6 and the number 5 so much, and I did. They're almost basically tied, but I have PTA as number 6, just because that was probably because of some of his movies that I don't care for as much, which is Inherent Vice, probably, and I Paul Thomas Anderson is one of those filmmakers where it feels kind of embarrassing to call myself a Paul Thomas Anderson fan. Like when I watched Licorice Pizza and was floored, I not floored by it, but I loved it. I loved it a lot. I loved the characters. I loved the dialogue. I loved how much of an adventure it felt, and I got so much. I got laughed at because of the controversy surrounding the relationship between the two leads and the age gap.
Yeah, I do remember that coming up in the press. I have yet to see the film. I mean, how much was the age gap? Was it like a 19-year-old and a 16-year-old?
It was a 18-year-old boy and a 29-year-old woman.
Okay.
And in the movie, it's a 15-year-old kid and a 25-year-old woman. So you look at that and you say, "Ew," but but it's not. It isn't a. These two characters are just going through their own thing, and they just happen to. They don't care what society thinks. I've been trying to see how I could defend my stance on this, but that's besides the point. Licorice Pizza, I still think is fantastic, but some of his films are some of the best I've ever seen. He's very good at. He's also very good at character studies, but he can. He could do like very small, little seminal movies like Punch Drunk Love, but he can do like almost epic character studies like There Will Be Blood or Magnolia. Um, he is great at pacing as well. I really. It's hard for me to explain, to be honest. It's hard for me to explain what I love so much about Paul Thomas Anderson. His movies just feel so carefully crafted, and there is definitely a unique style to his movies.
Yeah, I like There Will Be Blood was the film that was the first one where I was like, damn, this is just a work of art. And his ability to do so much was so little. I had to look it up because as I was watching the beginning, I think I was watching with my parents actually, and I was like, damn, I don't think they said a single word until just now. I think it's 9 minutes. There's literally no dialogue, and yet it keeps you so entranced in the film. And that's just a little piece to of one of the many, many magical things he can do, but it can show how effective he can be without even any dialogue. But you're right. His character studies for me, I think, are some of the best in film history. So, Ethan, your number five. This is unfortunately another director that I have yet to watch, and that is Park Chan Wook.
Park Chan Wook. So he is the first filmmaker on this list to have a movie that has reached my top 10 of all time. My top 10 favorite movies of all time. Old Boy is one of the most meticulously crafted, most expertly paced, most perfectly made movies that I have ever seen. Um, a story so unpredictable and investing that um, I just I couldn't stop thinking about it afterwards. Um, but his other movies are also phenomenal. The Handmaiden is one that I rewatched recently, and I've realized that one of his strengths is just making a story feel like a real story, which is a set of circumstances and plot lines that you don't know, and you don't where you don't know what's going to happen next. And I find that so powerful for Park Chan Wook, especially for his movies like the two that I mentioned. Uh, JSA, Joint Security Area. His other two Vengeance movies, Thirst is also fantastic. Probably his weakest for me would be Stoker, which is his only English-speaking movie. But he's just a master of thriller of the thriller between Bong Joon Ho and Park Chan Wook. I love Bong Joon Ho, but I would pick Park Chan Wook any day of the week.
Yeah, I will say the Vengeance trilogy is high on my watch list, and you had mentioned that maybe one of the weakest films was one that was an English speaking film, and I just can't imagine how difficult that would be as a director to try to direct in a different language.
Yeah, definitely.
You're number four, Ethan. This is another director that we did an episode on pretty recently. He is the master of suspense, and I will let you introduce and and give your initial thoughts on this director.
Well, the legendary Alfred Hitchcock. Um, this and the number three spot are pretty obvious. They're both considered two of the greatest filmmakers who ever lived. Hitchcock had a much different approach though. Instead of directing a movie once in a while, he made 52 in his 50-year career. I've seen half of them, and I've seen more movies from him than any other filmmaker. And well, as his pseudonym suggests, his greatest strength is suspense. He knows how to do suspense so well. With the three that we talked about, Rear Window, Vertigo, and Rope, were all incredibly well made and suspenseful little movies.
Yeah, he's an absolute king of snappy dialogue, I would say as well. And I
Yes.
don't, is that more, do you think, attributed to the time period where that was expected, or do you think that was just well crafted by him?
No, I think the dialogue in his movies are far better than most movies at the time. I think the only other person who I would consider a better writer overall would be Billy Wilder. But as a director, Hitchcock is just a genius.
And for one of the films that we talked about, Vertigo, his use of color, he has some of the prettiest films, which, you know,
Yeah,
I never really thought of that connection prior to actually watching him, because I think he's very much known from Psycho for people who haven't watched any of his films. But damn, does he make a pretty picture.
he does.
The next person on your list entering your top three best directors of all time is the one, the only Stanley Kubrick, which is the first episode we actually did together was the Stanley Kubrick episode. So
Yes, we did. That's right. I'm taking it back.
that was
Uh,
that was an awesome episode also, and I love
yeah.
talking about Kubrick.
Yeah. Uh, who doesn't love talking about Kubrick? What film fan doesn't love talking about Kubrick or watching his movies?
He's it's hard for me to even pinpoint what he's amazing at because he seems to be so multifaceted.
Yeah, definitely. Well, first off, his meticulous style. That is key because he directs with the precision of like a missile, like a guided missile.
Yeah, that is definitely, I think, one of the things that a lot of people link to him as a director is that he will get the right shot by any means necessary. Much like a David Fincher of sorts, but like the OG David Fincher type.
Exactly. Exactly.
That plays such a big role into how every scene does not, it all fits his films, I think.
Definitely. But he's also so versatile in genre. Whenever he makes a movie, he's so meticulous with that genre that it often becomes the best of that genre. 2001, one of the best sci-fi movies ever made. Full Metal Jacket or Paths of Glory, two of the best war movies ever made. The Shining, one of the best horror movies ever made. Doctor Strangelove, one of the best comedies ever made. He's so like whether it's able to make you laugh or be scared or be invested in a story, he'll do that for you.
And I know that this might be an impossible question to answer, but nowadays directors seem to very much kind of have that subsection that they are really, really great at. How does Kubrick, how can he transcend genre and jump seamlessly from genre to genre and excel, I guess?
Well, I think it's the way he. I think it's probably just. Well, the thing is that when it comes to when it comes to writing, he's also just so versatile. Most of that, because his style remains so much of the same throughout his 13 movies,
Mm-hmm.
but he somehow has been able to transcend all genre and time with his writing and his ideas. So I have no clue how,
Mm-hmm.
but he does it. He does it in spectacular fashion.
Yeah, you brought up a seriously great point too, and that is his films are quite honestly the closest thing that you can get to a timeless film. I like 2001 genuinely is one of the most timeless films I've ever seen.
Yeah,
For that to be mind blowing in our day and age is I just don't know how you can accomplish that. Just make every right choice where this is going to hold like a freaking Renaissance painting.
almost refuse to believe that it came out in 1968. It's that seamless. And I should mention that Park Chan Wook had one film in my top 10. Kubrick has two. He has two movies in my top 10 favorites.
Yeah. And you know, cuz he doesn't really miss at all either. Like talking to your consistency, there are few that are as consistently good as Stanley Kubrick. So from that
Yeah.
standpoint, you know, it's hard to discount him because he doesn't have a movie you can point at and say, okay, this really brings down the overall rating of him as a director.
Maybe his first two movies, but we'll discount those.
Yeah, now are his that does not include Spartacus. Is that his third film, Spartacus?
Was Spartacus, I believe, was his fifth movie.
Oh geez, okay, so I'm way off the mark. Your number two, this is another director that we did an episode on. He is one of the most heady, unique, artistic directors I think I've ever seen. And you know when you've seen a film by him because his taste and style is so uniquely his own. I'll let you introduce the man and kind of talk about what makes this character him.
Well, going back to Kubrick, one of Kubrick's favorite movies, when it came out, was Eraserhead, and Eraserhead was made by the legendary David Lynch. David Lynch, I was struggling to. I was thinking earlier today. I was thinking, should David Lynch be number one? Because his movies are so consistently amazing to me, and he's one of the most creative men I have ever seen walk this earth. And just how much he has control over his movies, and not only that, but just how amazing of a person he is as well. Rather than just being an asshole like Kubrick or Hitchcock, or my number one for that matter. But he's an amazing person too. So Mulholland Drive is one of the most effective movies I've ever seen. It is so close to my top 10. I think it's like number 11 for me probably. Um, but uh, he is a landmark filmmaker, and he has made some of my favorite movies ever. From Mulholland Drive to Blue Velvet to Eraserhead, he is from top to bottom a master.
And I think there's something to be said. I know I've mentioned it in the introduction of him, but like really he marches to the beat of his own drum. He's so artistically unique in that like it's it's a David Lynch film because of his artistic direction.
Absolutely.
Going on to your number one, I'll let you introduce the man, the myth, the
Film,
legend.
the film bros rise up. No, my all-time favorite filmmaker is Quentin Tarantino. As if people would follow me on Letterboxd or Instagram or YouTube, obviously can see my profile is always Vincent Vega and Jules Winfield from Pulp Fiction. Pulp Fiction is maybe the most influential movie to me ever. Uh, it is a movie that inspired me to be in this industry. It is what inspired me to love movies. It is what inspired me to be a screenwriter. And so, I was, which is why I was hesitant to put David Lynch at number one, because as much as I love Lynch, Tarantino is what Tarantino is the man that literally changed my life with his movies. I think he's the most consistent filmmaker for me. Uh, I would say like half of his movies are masterpieces, and at worst, he's pretty good. But overall, he is a genius. And I actually did see him live promoting his book for his book tour. I went to one of his interviews, and it was one of the most surreal things I had ever seen.
He is such an entertaining interview for sure. How long did the interview go?
I think the interview lasted like an hour and a half, and then
That's
he
awesome.
did a reading for his book. And I think you guys should check it out. Honestly, and this is obviously it's not a. He's probably never gonna sponsor me or anybody for that matter. But his book called Cinema Speculation, I would highly recommend picking it up if you can. It's a really cool book.
Now,
And oh, sorry.
does it kind of go into the inspirations that you see so commonly in his films, which he pays homage to?
Yeah, it's more or less a memoir of the films that he grew up with, the more rebellious films
Mhm.
of the late '60s, early '70s that he saw when he was like 9 to 13.
That's awesome. And I am sure every single last director on your list loves film, but I have never seen a director wear the love of cinema on their sleeve quite like Quentin Tarantino.
Yeah, absolutely. And just him talking about movies is amazingly entertaining.
Without doubt. And I want to throw out there Reservoir Dogs, the opening was like one of the landmark events in my cinematic journey, I guess you could call it. Because I was like, that dialogue, I was like, this is genius. And I think from that day, like, my love for cinema grew exponentially.
Yeah, absolutely.
Next, we're going to look at my list of directors. And I think you're going to get a good feel for the difference in how our journey between Ethan and I, as far as exploring cinema, I am quite early on in my journey and have not seen quite as many films, but this is the list from the directors that I have seen now. And we're going to start at number 10. And I did this because I kind of have a numbers background. So I quite literally broke it down by average for me. So some people might find that to be less fun. And also I tried to factor in some directors that I hadn't seen too many films on. So if I've only seen like their three best, I tried to factor that in as well.
Hmm.
But my number 10 is the Coen brothers. And I feel like they have such a distinct style. No Country for Old Men is like it's it's quite a way to kind of like reinvent the Western genre, and then like Fargo and The Big Lebowski too. They're so
Yeah.
uniquely written, and they have that feel that you know it's a Coen brother movie.
Yeah. Talk about amazing writers.
Oh, absolutely. Like as far as writing, maybe another one that kind of stands out where it's like these are it's a genius writer would be Charlie Kaufman is like another guy that I would throw into kind of that list with them, but he's completely
Yes.
different, you know, but such an
Yes,
effective
very
writer.
different. Also, yeah, I'm just gonna throw that out. Throw this out there. I'm not. Charlie Kaufman is great. Um, I've never been able to get into a Charlie Kaufman movie, but that's another topic for another day.
They are very, very challenging. And by the end of a Charlie Kaufman movie, I'm always like, I think I get part of it, but there's like 10 different details where I'm like, I definitely don't get that part though. But
Yeah, yeah.
the number 9, this is a director that you had on your list as well, Ethan, and that is Paul Thomas Anderson. And it really goes down to the character study movies because those are primarily the ones that I've seen. There Will Be Blood, Phantom Thread, Boogie Nights, and I know I've seen at least one other one, but those are pretty awesome movies. And There Will Be Blood is probably my favorite of the bunch.
Yes.
The next director that I have, I just kind of in passing mentioned while we were going through your list, and that is David Fincher, one of the more meticulous directors in Hollywood today.
Yes.
Man, there's just so much that I like about him. He was what I would consider like one of the names I would throw out as a favorite director prior to like really exploring film deeper. And I obviously still have a huge affinity for him. Like Seven is my favorite movie by him, but like The Social Network is great. And I also want to give a shout out to the TV series that he had on Netflix where it covered the BAU, and I think it was oh damn, now I'm drawing a blank
There's
on what.
Mindhunters.
Oh yeah, that's one of my favorite TV series, and I was so bummed out when they let them out of their contracts, which is
Yeah.
possibly a death nail for the show.
Yeah. I I will say, not to get off topic, and I'm sorry I cut you off.
No, you're fine.
Uh, but about talking about TV shows with David Lynch, Twin Peaks. Twin
Oh
Peaks is my
yeah,
favorite TV show. So there you go. Just wanted to quickly mention that.
it is like something that a few really great directors have been able to do, and that is kind of
Yeah.
crossover from cinema into TV, which I feel takes you can utilize a lot of the strengths from cinema, but I mean, you can't, you have to craft it in a way to where it plays on television. So I think it's always impressive when a director's able to do that, such as Lynch
Tar-
and Fincher.
Hopefully Tarantino, because his new 8 episode miniseries just got announced.
No way. Is it linked to a streaming service? Has he gone into what it's going to be about?
Nope. Just that it's happening.
That's all I need to hear, though. Quite honestly.
Yes, I mean that's all anybody needs to hear.
And hopefully it's readily accessible and on a kind of a major streaming service. But I feel like I might be speaking for both of us. I feel like it might be worth the investment, even if it was on its own streaming service.
Yeah, I will be readily accessible.
The next one, this was a strange one, and I really wrestled with this one in my head because it felt like a almost like a cheat in a sense. But I put Kislowski and going into the TV element, and it all stems from not only the short stories, which were film adaptations, but the whole series of Decalogue, where I had so much exposure to him by watching those 12, the 10 episodes in the two movies that, and they were so highly rated that it put him into the upper echelon that I felt it was necessary to add him to the list. But that is another director that you and I covered on the channel as well.
Oh yeah, I mean, Decalogue was an emotional roller coaster that I was happy to go on, but I don't know if I want to go on again.
I completely agree with you. And there was some like really great episodes, and I kind of wonder, and if there's anyone who's listening who has done this, does anyone ever just pick out one of their favorite episodes and rewatch that? Because I don't know if I would feel right if I watched just one and not the whole series again.
Interesting.
But there's so many
Yeah.
great episodes that I feel like you could, so I'm very conflicted as far as that goes.
I will say one thing: Keselowski is really great at uh, thematic connection. With Decalogue, obviously, with connecting 10 movies to the Catholic Ten Commandments, is genius and done so subtly and so well.
That's and I think this was maybe even the same phrasing I used when we did our episode on him, but it's like that is such a fun, creative like obstacle or challenge rather to bestow upon yourself in trying to do something like that. And I
Yeah.
respect the hell out of it, honestly.
Yep, it led to one of the most embarrassing moments probably when I realized halfway through our discussion that there isn't just the Jewish version of the Ten Commandments is not the only version of the Ten Commandments, and there is such thing as the Catholic Ten Commandments.
Yeah, the thing is with the exposure, like when you mentioned it, I thought that they would have to be the same thing. And I was surprised as well that they differed. So I think no harm done there. You know what I mean?
Except for maybe Catholics, but just,
The next director is one that we both have, and we talked at length, but it is Igmar Bergman, and Persona was the one where I was like, he felt like what is like a masterful director from that film alone, and he was able to replicate it too because he has Autumn Sonata, which I consider to be like one of the best movies I've seen as well, and Cries and Whispers and Wild Strawberries and Seven Seal. I mean, he's just a rock solid director.
yeah.
The number five, and I think we had talked about this a little bit in passing, in that this director isn't necessarily your cup of tea, but definitely was one that I felt like was within my wheelhouse. And I kind of appreciated the things he was able to accomplish on screen, and that is Andrei Tarkovsky. And I feel like he's a great director for us to discuss because
Did
One that was not on your list, but I kind of want to get your thoughts and feelings on him.
did I say that he was not my cup of tea ever?
You did not say that. I might have gone too strongly on that, and I apologize.
I thought you were going with Charlie Kaufman.
Oh no, no.
Um, Tarkovsky makes movies that are great. I have not seen many of his movies. I've only seen three.
Okay,
I've
okay.
seen Mirror, I've seen Stalker, and I've seen Solaris. And I think all three are great. Absolutely great. Stalker's amazing. And Mirror and Solaris are both fantastic. Um, Maybe I would like a little more out of him as a filmmaker. I've still yet to watch more just because there's such a time investment.
Mhm.
Andrei Rublev, which is maybe his most acclaimed movie to date, is 3 hours long, and so he's such an investment, and it's not like a huge reward to watch his movie. I mean, like he is a fantastic filmmaker. I will, no doubt. He's not overrated. He's not a Charlie Kaufman. I don't think he is bad at all. And but I sometimes leave his films wanting a little bit more.
Totally understood, and sorry for I kind of put slander in your basically in your mouth, and
No, no, no. You're all good.
yeah, Andrei Rublev is actually my favorite amongst the bunch from Tarkovsky, and but you're definitely correct. He has a pace that is purposefully slow, and you can feel that in Andrei Rublev, but it still is able to keep you entranced throughout it. So it was pretty great, and the way he has a feel in his movies. I think Mirror is like it feels like a dream, you know, and it brings you into a dream. And he's the amount of thought you can kind of put into what he was trying to express in his films is just something that I had a great appreciation for.
Absolutely.
Number four, one that we both have as well, Scorsese. He has one of my favorite films of all time, Goodfellas. Crime is he can do it pretty much like nobody else. And you mentioned Raging Bull as well, and that whole movie is just it allows the the actor Robert De Niro to just really come off the page and just be this absolutely amazing character throughout, and that was just absolutely awesome to see. And it kind of showed a different side of Scorsese, I think, but while exhibiting a lot of the strengths he has in all of his films.
Hmm.
Number three, I have Stanley Kubrick. He is awesome. I think we can both agree on that, directing wise, but character wise, maybe there could be some debate there. Number two, I got Tarantino. I think, like you said, he was just kind of hugely influential into like crafting the style of movie that I greatly appreciate. And you kind of brought up there's a phrase, film bro, and I think it gets thrown around in a negative connotation. But I think you say it almost endearingly, and I think it's because there's like a great justification that it's like as a young film viewer to see these strong characters on screen kind of it makes you want to connect with them and be a strong type of person yourself. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's always going to be something that I feel like his films are always going to stick with me because it was so early on in my life that it's like I'm always going to have nostalgia. And I also thought Kill Bill Volume 1 and Volume 2 was tremendous, but that's besides the point.
Yes.
Number 1, I just watched another one of his films today. He was number 1 before, but it brought his average up to where he is concretely number 1, at least for now, and that is Akira Kurosawa.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm going to be honest. Prior to joining Letterboxd, prior to starting this podcast, I think Kill Bill Volume 1 was the only, and Volume 2 were the only samurai films I've ever seen. And I absolutely love samurai films. I don't know what it is. I guess when they're well done, you can really appreciate it. But he does them pretty much the best I've ever seen. And he's also shown that he's able to kind of jump out of the samurai genre and excel in that as well.
So. Oh, totally. I was not expecting Kurosawa at all. Have we ever talked about Kurosawa on your show before?
I don't think we've ever done an episode on Kurosawa.
Dang. Because I honestly was fully expecting to put I was fully expecting you to put Herzog at the top, but
see, I really respect his thought process behind films. I love how he crafts them. I love the subject material that he chooses. He does some of his films are like just slightly above, well, not above average, but like very good films as opposed to like 5 out of 5s for me.
Yeah, because I saw in your letterbox that you gave Kagemusha a 5.
Oh man, I love that film, and it's so crazy to see Kurosawa have a film in color after watching like 6 or 7 films in black and white, because he is just expert at having bright, vibrant colors in his movies.
Yeah. But Kurosawa, that's a guy that I should also give an honorable mention to for my list. And I'm shocked I didn't put him on, because he is, in all accounts, a genius. My favorite of his movies is actually High and Low. I love that film noir style that he's able to give to his movies.
Oh, I love that film as well. I gave it a 5 out of 5, and I feel like I can't remember the film, but they're like, look, this like helped craft like some of the genius films to follow. And I think one is like almost a direct inspiration from it, but just the way it was done, it was like, it felt like a really great noir, which is like, I think it went against expectations because people felt like he was good at period pieces and samurai movies, and was able to just freaking hit that out of the park.
Nope, he's just an amazing director, and I do not blame you whatsoever for putting him at number 1.
So, Ethan, we are going to jump now to your list of top 25 movies. There's a good bit of these that I haven't seen, and I'll start with 25 is one that definitely on my watch list, high on my watch list, I still need to get to, but it is Blue Velvet by none other than David Lynch.
Well, yeah, Blue Velvet is amazing. It's I think David Lynch does crime thrillers better than any other genre of film. And Blue Velvet is just one of the pinnacles of that. Frank Booth is the greatest villain in cinema history, and I struggle between him and Hans Landa, but I honestly think he is 1A to Hans Landa's 1B. He is already Dennis Hopper gives one of the best performances ever, but also just thematically, how he is just the epitome just the entire soul representation of this horrible darkness that glooms over the world at night. Just the fact that he's just the human embodiment of that is so amazingly done. And yeah, Blue Velvet is a masterpiece. It is the movie that introduced me to David Lynch as well. And I said this is one of the best directed movies I've ever seen. And about 2 years later, I still think it is.
Coming up next, this is a film that I have a great appreciation for as well. It is There Will Be Blood.
Yeah. There Will Be Blood is one of the greatest character studies of all time. And it is Daniel Day-Lewis, again, one of the best performances I've ever seen in a movie. He's able to telegraph things that are like very subtle, but it gives you so much to think about when it comes to his character. Like I would consider it like an allegory for all greedy business, like him as like an allegory for all greedy businessmen. And like he loves winning and he absolutely hates losing. And it's just such a thrilling film. When I first watched it like 3 years ago, I was like, "Oh, is it this? I don't know if I'm gonna really think this is great." It's one of the most enthralling movies ever.
It's so great. It's so subtly done. And for people, if you've ever asked yourself like, "Oh, I wish I could see a movie from kind of the antagonist perspective," this is maybe one of the best shining examples of a movie that is spectacularly done that pretty much covers that, I would say. Number 23, this was a film that I saw for the first time in English class while I was in high school.
Same.
And I was like, oh, it's like, and this was when I was very close-minded. I was like, this is a black and white movie. I'm not going to like it. And like almost immediately I was like, wait a minute. And like started getting more and more invested until like I was just completely enveloped in this movie.
Yeah.
It is 12 Angry Men, directed by Sidney Lumet.
Yes. Sidney Lumet is also a genius. He also directed one of my, up there with my favorites, not on the top 25, but Dog Day Afternoon is very
great.
close.
So great.
Such a great movie. Such a great movie. But 12 Angry Men, what can you say about 12 Angry Men that hasn't been said already? It's just a masterpiece. It's one of the most well-written, well-directed, sweaty, enthralling, investing movies you will ever watch. If you're watching this right now and you have not seen 12 Angry Men somehow, what are you doing? Go watch it.
Yep. It's like Dialogue 101. If you want to write really intriguing and investing dialogue, this is the perfect film for that.
Yeah, and also writing characters who don't even have names. They're just given numbers.
Yep, exactly.
And they're some of the most memorable characters in cinema history.
It's absolutely tremendous. Number 22. This is by your number one director, and that is Inglourious Basterds.
Yeah. Inglourious Basterds is a quick story when I first watched Pulp Fiction and I said, "Oh man, this movie's so rad. Oh, I love it so much." And people were saying, "Oh, Inglourious Basterds is better." And I just stepped into my 13-year-old self for a second. and I was like, "No, it's not." And so I watched Inglourious Basterds and was completely floored by it. I'm not going to say it's better than Pulp Fiction, but it is an amazing movie. It is another example of how to do tension so well, whether it be the the opening scene with the milk farmer and Colonel Hans Landa, who's my runner-up for best villain of all time. Uh, but also the underground bar scene is amazing, and again, amazingly written film, and I love it so much.
The attention to detail, especially in that bar scene, is just, it feels like
Oh,
one of those genius moments in cinema that you can
oh,
watch it over
yeah.
and over and appreciate.
Again, attention to detail. Tarantino's so good at that. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, it's like you're launched back into the 1960s. He no expense was spared.
Love and Glorious Bastards as well. Number 21, this is a film that I have yet to see, so I will let you introduce and go into it, Ethan.
Uh,
It is Miyazaki's
yes.
Spirited Away.
Oh, Spirited Away. Okay. Spirited Away is my favorite animated movie. I'm just a massive fan of Ghibli movies. Um, I've seen all 23 movies produced by Studio Ghibli, and this is definitely my favorite. It beat Coraline for my favorite animated film. Uh, and it so Spirited Away is one of those movies. I actually saw it when it came back in theaters. I decided that I was going to watch it when it was re-released in theaters, and I wish it was 5 hours long. I never want that movie to end. It is so beautiful and so the again attention to detail. It is one of the most visually attentive, visually meticulous movies ever made. Just the amount of moving pieces that every frame holds is so wonderfully executed. The characters are so likable and memorable. And when it was over, I wanted to cry.
That is like, I've seen some animated movies and you never expect it to just pull on your heartstrings as hard as it does. But I feel like animated movies have been able to do that more, like just as frequently as live action, which always is a shock and a pleasant surprise, I would say.
Absolutely.
Number 20, we have a film that you have covered in detail, which, if you would like
Yes,
to
I
see
have.
a full on analysis, Ethan's YouTube page will be linked down in the description. I encourage everyone and anyone to check it out, watch the film, and then check out Ethan's analysis because it is pretty damn great.
Yeah. Chinatown. Well, burnt out on it maybe just a tad, but it is still one of my all-time favorite movies. And for a long time, it was not that. Chinatown was a movie that I respected, but I didn't love. But then it was Red Letter Media's video on Who Framed Roger Rabbit. They're like, well, Roger Rabbit basically stole the plot of Chinatown. And then I was like, oh yeah, they did. And so I decided to watch Roger Rabbit again. Loved it. But then I watched Chinatown again, and I was like, this script is perfect. There's not a single flaw in this script. It is so well done. How did I not see this beforehand? And that's what encouraged me. Doing this show and watching the movie again, I said, "Hey, I'll make an analysis video on the script," and I did.
And that is pretty awesome. Again, I encourage everyone to check out Ethan's channel for that analysis. The number 19, I think, is very close to my top horror movie of all time. It is John Carpenter's The Thing.
The Thing. It is such a. It's kind of weird to me how acclaimed this movie is. It is the top-rated horror movie on Letterboxd.
It's like adding
Yeah.
that mystery, and it
Oh
feels
yeah.
like it explores like a very relatable theme that it's just in such a creative and imaginary way. I
Yeah.
loved that film so much.
Yes, I love it too. It is so 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 good. I've seen it 7 or 8 times maybe. It is Carpenter with the appropriate budget. It's Carpenter with the perfect pacing, and he is close to Hitchcock as far as suspense. And he has made he has crafted my favorite sequence in all of horror history, which is the blood test scene, which I'm not going to spoil, but if you have not seen The Thing, watch that, and the blood test scene is just mind blowing. It is amazing.
Some of the greatest tension ever captured on film.
Yeah.
Number 18. This has one of the greatest performances I've ever seen captured on film. And Daniel Day-Lewis's and There Will Be Blood is certainly on there as well. And these two could easily battle it out. But number 18, Whiplash.
Whiplash, I believe, is the latest movie on this list, coming out in 2014. Well, it's a genius movie that I was blown away by the first time I watched it. I recently watched Damien Chazelle's La La Land, which I thought was great. It's definitely not Whiplash, though. You're right. J.K. Simmons has one of the greatest performances in film history as a horrifying, terrifying force, and it boils down to less of a movie about music and more of just like a psychological thriller. Mm-hmm. Just this one guy grilling into this young man who wants to become one of the greats of his field, and just it's like psychological warfare, and I love every second of it.
Exactly. It's almost like J.K. Simmons is the personification of that inner fire for people who want to attain basically the unattainable, which is like greatness, or to be remembered for all of time for how good you are at one thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
What a spectacular movie. I'm a huge fan of Whiplash as well. Number 17, this is one you had mentioned on your directorial list. This is a Wim Wenders film, as I think you had stated, one of the most beautifully shot films, and that is Paris, Texas.
Paris, Texas is visually alone is one of the most beautiful movies ever made, but also like in terms of thematically, Harry Dean Stanton's performance is one of my all-time favorite performances ever. It was the role he was born to play, because at heart he is a character actor, but the character he's playing, with his character acting, his face is often seen as a vast landscape, as the film of Paris, Texas itself. You could just read so much emotion from his face, and it's a spectacular film that I highly recommend you check out.
The next film on the list, this was it was one, not the first one, but that I had seen by Christopher Nolan, but certainly like once I started to get into his films, one that was very highly lauded, that I felt I needed to go out and see, and that is Christopher Nolan's Memento.
Memento. One second. Excuse me. Memento is one of the most genius movies ever made from a writing and editing standpoint as well. How you're able to make this story make sense is key, and I love it. I love it so much. I haven't seen it in a while, but it left a deep impression on me.
Yeah, without doubt. Just being able to play with the narrative and how the story is structured and told like it's in a class all its own, I feel.
Yes.
Number 15, this is a movie, again, it's high on my watch list. I have not seen yet, but it is City of God.
City of God is one of the most ballsy films I've ever seen in my life. I watched this one night late at night because I had a bucket list poster, and it's just a list of movies that, according to the manufacturers, the 100 movies you should see before you die, and this was on there. I think it was even like the third or fourth one listed. So I decided late at night, you know what, I'm gonna watch this, and I was so blown away by how ballsy it was, because it had the balls to depict like this realistic violence, to portray a sort of message of poverty and the social structure, and it's basically like a gangster epic set in the Brazilian slums, but done in such a way where you feel for every character, and like it lights a fire in your stomach. It's part of that trilogy of hood films that are way better than Boys in the Hood or Menace to Society. Those are good movies, but as far as like great hood films, nothing beats stuff like Do the Right Thing, La N, or City of God.
Absolutely. Number 14, this is a film that we covered at length. It is made by the legendary Alfred Hitchcock and stars James Stewart in Rear Window.
Yes, Rear Window is an amazingly written film. It has one of the most suspenseful finales in cinema history. And that's it. That's all I got.
I mean, we've covered that so greatly, but I'll say it once more. Just using that set and exploring the story through basically like the POV of our main character makes it so unique and interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
Number 13, this is another movie that's super high on my list of favorite horror movies. It is Alien.
Yes, Alien is a movie that when I first watched it, I was also blown away by the atmosphere and the suspense of it all. I love that slow, suspenseful buildup of the first half, and again, Harry Dean Stanton's in it, and I love the world that it creates. Very few science fiction films manage to do as good of a world building job as Alien has, and I do love Aliens a lot. Aliens is amazing, but Alien is very close to perfect.
Yeah, the ability to make you almost feel claustrophobic and like you really can't trust any space is just, there's no film that does it better than Alien.
Yeah, absolutely.
Number 12, this is my all-time favorite horror movie as of now, and I feel as though I don't know how it's going to get overtaken, but Stanley Kubrick's The Shining.
Yep, it is also my favorite horror movie of all time, barely edging out Alien. But it's The Shining. Camera work so incredible that people theorize that Stanley Kubrick had directed and faked the moon landing, and he was apologizing for it with this movie. Direction so precise that every scene feels necessary, and it is such a scary and creepy, disturbing movie, and I love it.
Me too. Me too. Number 11, this is by one of your absolute faves. It is a David Lynch film, and that film, of course, is Mulholland Drive.
Mulholland Drive is a roller coaster of emotions for a movie. I on its own, the film is already fantastic, but getting into the roots of the themes makes it one of the most effective movies for me ever, as far as making you disturbed and being just like simultaneously a love letter and a sort of a dissertation of Hollywood and what it's become. And it is genius, so genius, and that I haven't been able to stop. I didn't wasn't able to stop thinking about it when I was finished dissecting it with the 10 clues.
Yeah, it was one of those films where after you're able to kind of piece everything together, it's like it's kind of a mind blowing event for certain.
Yeah.
Number 10, this is Martin Scorsese, probably one of Robert De Niro's most famous roles, which is saying a lot considering he's probably first or second as far as the most acclaimed actor of all time. And one of the few, well, not few, but it is a movie that I am dishonored to say I have yet to watch, but it is Taxi Driver.
Whoa. I didn't know that. Um, Taxi Driver is amazing. I've seen it. As we get to this top 10 has remained set in stone for years for me, except for the next pick. But we'll get to that. Taxi Driver is a somehow one of Martin Scorsese's most iconic films, despite the fact that it's one of his most avant-garde. Very slow burn. The plot isn't super set in stone. It's just about this one character and sort of the idea of masculinity and isolation.
Number 9, this is a film that was directed by one of your favorite directors. It is Old Boy.
I did talk about Old Boy kind of in length in my the director ranking, but Old Boy is one of the most well crafted stories of all time. With and you honestly don't know where it's going to go. Probably minutes from each plot development, and I love it. The filmmaking is so creative, and it's just one of those movies that I can rewatch over and over again.
I was going to make a joke that you put the Spike Lee Old Boy on your list, but his name somehow slipped my mind while I was trying to make the joke.
We don't talk about this movie. We don't talk about that movie.
The number 8 film. This is one I really want to see because I've recently begun watching westerns and even watched some westerns directed by Clint Eastwood. But the main character of this one is Clint Eastwood, but is not directed by him. It is rather directed by Sergio Leone, and it is The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
Yeah. I feel like this is a 12 Angry Men situation where people are skeptical when they go into it. They're like, "Oh, it's a western. My grandpa likes westerns. Why would I watch a western?" But hey, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly is one of the best directed movies ever. The cinematography is amazing, super versatile. It goes from so many extremes. There are some shots that look like you could paint them and they belong in a museum. The score by Ennio Morricone, moi, it is Ennio Morricone is the greatest composer in movie history, in my opinion. He makes some of the most engaging, enthralling scores for films, whether it's this or Once Upon a Time in the West or The Thing. He is a genius for his scores.
One question I want to ask you, because it's honestly the greatest barrier to entry for me, is, and I'm sure you would recommend to watch all three, but is it a necessity to watch all three, or can you watch The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly and then maybe get to the other in the trilogy later? Or is it
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. They're not, they're connected by a character, but they're not really connected by a character. Okay. It's just it's really just the selling point of Clint Eastwood. That's the connection is the selling point of the film.
I gotcha. Because obviously I do want to watch all three. It's just I think the first two, a few dollars more, and I forget the name of the other one, but they're close to 3 hours, and like that it would be basically a week's worth of movie watching, just splitting up those two and then The Good, the Bad, the Ugly.
Yeah. Well, so Fistful of Dollars is the first one. Okay. It is basically a remake of Yojimbo, like an almost shot-for-shot remake of Yojimbo.
I love that movie.
I love that movie too, but it's not, Fistful of Dollars is not as good as Yojimbo. And watching it, it kind of dampens your mood for Fistful of Dollars, but it's still a good movie. For a few dollars more is really, really fantastic, and I actually definitely would recommend you watched it as well. Probably get to Good, the Bad, the Ugly first, but for a few dollars more, it doesn't hurt to watch also.
Okay. Number 7. I love that you have this on your list. This is like, it's its own type of, like, it is the perfectly crafted version of the action movie that came out during this time period, where they just absolutely nailed it.
Yes.
It's Arnold Schwarzenegger at his best, arguably.
Mm-hmm.
It's Terminator 2.
Definitely. Yeah. Back in 2018, I had a really big stint where I would just watch a bunch of 90s and 80s and 90s action movies. That's where I kind of started my journey of being a film buff, was watching these action movies. Not all of them were good. I watched like The Rock, Con Air, Lethal Weapon, RoboCop, but Terminator 2 was always my favorite. It is an amazingly made action movie, but it's more than an action movie. It's also a movie with some very interesting themes, like the idea of changing your fate, and it's just the way they go about saying what they needed to say was really well crafted, and obviously the special effects at the time were revolutionary. With the CG liquid Terminator, the characters are so well defined, and I love the action. It is definitely the best made action movie. Every action set piece is so well done.
Just a few little tidbits I want to throw in. Sarah Connor, one of the most badass female action heroes, and then the actor who played the T-1000, the liquid Terminator. He somehow, and I thought it was one of these things like you can't keep your eyes open when you sneeze, where he was able to train himself to shoot a gun and not blink, which I didn't even know was possible.
So. Yeah, he also trained his breathing so like he trained his breathing so much that during the dirt bike scene when he was running towards the dirt bike, they had to consistently like edit out certain parts because he would always catch up to the dirt bike.
You have to love it. I mean, that guy
Yeah,
fully committed to the role, and you can really tell on screen.
absolutely.
Number 6, this is a freaking amazing masterpiece of a film. Arguably Kubrick's absolute best film. It is 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Yeah, we talked about that extensively, but 2001 is one of the most perfect movies ever made. It is you almost refuse to believe that it's 54 years old at this point. Um, and the fact that it didn't even get nominated for Best Picture at the Oscars is a testament to how the Oscars have always been kind of garbage.
You got to give it to the Oscars. I mean, they are consistently good at being inconsistent.
Yes, definitely.
The next film is another Kubrick film. It
Yes.
is one that we covered on the podcast, and one that I loved our discussion on. It is A Clockwork Orange.
Clockwork Orange. 2001. If you were to say to me, no, 2001 is definitely better, then I wouldn't. I would not deny that. 2001 is an amazing movie, but A Clockwork Orange to me is a movie that I can rewatch over and over again. With 2001, I could probably watch once in a blue moon and say, oh well, that movie is perfect. But Clockwork Orange is a movie that is so entertaining and its themes are so widespread to me and more relatable as far as like a movie that says what it needs to say as far as like violence and the way he communicates those themes of violence in this film is so perfectly done, and I love. There's so many sequences that I love throughout, but it's a film that barely edges itself over 2001 for me.
Absolutely. Number 4, this is another one that I'm just ashamed to say I have not seen yet, especially considering how much I love gangster films and crime films. But it is Coppola's masterpiece, The Godfather.
Godfather. It's often considered the greatest movie ever made, so putting it this high is a little cliche, but it is a masterfully genius film. Just the opening wedding scene alone, perfectly done. Just the pacing of everything. There's really not one thing you can pinpoint about The Godfather that's good. It's a just a amazingly made movie.
Yeah, and just one little tidbit I want to add is Marlon Brando is really one of those actors who has inspired a generation of actors that are now considered some of the greatest actors of all time. So I think by proxy that has to make him one of the greatest ever, despite
Absolutely.
his late career stints where he would have lines given to him by his secretary in an earpiece. But that's besides the
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
Number 3, another absolute badass gangster film.
Yeah.
Al Pacino is Scarface.
Yes. Brian De Palma is also in my honorable mentions for my favorite director. Between this and Blowout, which is very close to being on this list. But Scarface, rewatching it, I think like 2 months ago, It's a movie that I would say isn't as good as most of the others on this list, but as far as a movie that captivated me when I first watched it, there's not really much like it. From the shootout between Tony Montana and all these gangsters is so awesome. Al Pacino gives my favorite performance in cinema history. Not one of my all-time favorite performance in film history. Just how charismatic and iconic he is in that role is something that you can't take your eyes off of him. And yeah, I just love that movie so much.
Got to give it to Pacino. I mean, he's one of the great actors and really
Yeah,
pours all of himself into his roles.
yeah. Probably his
Number
better roles.
Well, yes, that is
but
true.
I mean, I honestly think his role as Sonny Wartsick in Dog Day Afternoon is
Oh God,
rewatching it. I realized how amazing he was in that movie as well.
he nailed it in that movie.
Yeah.
Number two, this is probably Tarantino's uh, most well-known film, and Ethan, you obviously think it is his best film as well. It is Pulp Fiction.
Pulp Fiction is my most influential movie. It is the most influential movie to me. It changed my life forever, and it made me want to write films. So it's safe to say that it's probably my favorite written film, even though Chinatown, I'd say, is probably the best written film. There's really nothing quite like it. It was just a unique, bizarre masterpiece for its time, and I will love it forever. People were getting annoyed by how much I was talking about it when I first watched it.
And number one, and it's the end of the list, so it's going to be the last time that I have to say this. It is shamefully an admission that I have to say a film I have yet to see. But
No.
it is The Shawshank Redemption.
Yeah. Like 12 Angry Men, like The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Not really much I could say about it. Oh, and also similar to The Godfather. It's just something that um, it's a movie that it really speaks for itself as far as one of the most captivating movies ever. Really, every piece works together seamlessly. Cinematography, performances, dialogue, score, everything about it just works so well.
We're now going to move on to my top 25 list. And I've got to say, Ethan, from your list, I like it just really highlights some of the all-time greats that I've yet to get to. So it's made a point in my mind that I have to officially go out and make a point to watch these really great films that I've been missing out on.
Yeah.
So we are going to start with number 25, and number 25 is A Dog Day Afternoon. It was one that we were talking about, and it just feels like Al Pacino absolutely kills it, and Sidney Lumet just takes this true story and crafts it into something just insanely captivating.
Oh yeah, it's so good.
Number 24 is Good Time. This was the film
Oh.
where I was like, Robert Pattinson is legit. He is not just a Twilight actor.
Yeah.
And like it's like the thing that I think makes the Safdie Bros, that and Good Time. It's like if they come out with a movie from here on out, I feel obligated to go and see it.
Yes. Good Time is great. I will say I do prefer Uncut Gems though.
Yeah, I have to say, like, Adam Sandler's performance in that film really makes it like an absolute masterpiece.
Yes.
And for me, it's really just picking hairs at that point between the two.
Yeah.
They're so
No,
great.
I don't blame you for Good Time.
Number 23, this is one that we covered by the English director Michael Lee. It is Secrets and Lies. Character building and their dialogue and their dynamics were just, they were beautifully done in that film.
I was surprised with myself that I didn't put Naked or Secrets and Lies on my top 25. It's on my top 80, and they're probably pretty close to my top 25. But I'm glad you have it on your list.
Absolutely. Number 22, this is Tarkovsky. It outranks Stalker. It's the same director, surprisingly, and I feel like I might have to rewatch Stalker, so that could possibly change. But nonetheless, it is Solaris by Andrei Tarkovsky, which is just a
Really?
mesmerizing film. Yeah,
Wow,
really
that's
love that.
interesting.
And it was a film that, it's so similar to 2001. And while I have a greater appreciation for 2001, Solaris came damn close to being a better film, which is just, that's a high honor as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
Number 21, I believe this is the highest animated film I have. And the story in and of itself was really neat, but the animation style was like, I was just glued to the screen the whole time because I loved the animation style. It is Akira.
Oh, Akira. Yeah, I love Akira as well.
It's such a neat film. I really love it. Like, I give so much credit to the artists that work on that film because it is just, it's a beautiful film.
Yes, absolutely.
Number 20 is Decalogue 5. And that is, it is the episode that later, or no, it started originally as the film, a short film about killing, but was truncated to fit on screen as Decalogue Episode 5. And I felt like the truncation of the movie into the episode definitely made the pace snappier. So, and the some of the impactful scenes had more impact for that reason, I felt.
Mm-hmm.
Number 19, another Mike Lee movie. It is Naked. You said basically everything that needs to be said. The main protagonist slash antagonist is just one of the best written characters. Period.
Yeah, definitely.
Number 18, this is a John Ford movie. It's a Western. Did not expect to love this nearly as much as I did, but it is The Searchers. And I just love the way that film was written.
Um, yeah, I this is probably the movie that we would probably disagree most on because I don't like The Searchers actually.
So where does like your main point of criticism come from, I guess?
I guess it's just I don't like John Wayne as a protagonist, I guess.
Okay.
And I felt that a lot of it wasn't very compelling to me. It's been a long time, so I definitely need to revisit it because a lot of people love it, and then obviously it's one of your favorites, so it'll probably compel me to go watch it again. But when I first watched it, I said to myself, I don't, I don't understand.
So I think one of the points that made me love the film was it's not supposed to glorify John Wayne, but rather kind of highlight his flawed mindset. And I loved how that played throughout this huge long journey, and that he had these fatal flaws basically that stopped him from achieving what he could be despite committing acts of good.
Gotcha. All right.
Number 17, this is Kurosawa. I think the earliest entry in my top 25. It is Rashomon, and I just love the way that that story is told. It almost has like the way that Memento tells a story in a completely unique way, and it like illuminates what you can do within cinema. I felt like Rashomon did for me as well.
Yeah, definitely.
16 is Tarkovsky again. It is Andrei Rublev. Just beautiful cinematography and a really compelling story about a very interesting character throughout history.
Hmm.
15, this is one that we covered on our episode. It is Vertigo. I think I just have to highlight that dream sequence because that was what really put it over the top for me.
Oh yeah, that dream sequence is really well done.
14 is High and Low, another Kurosawa movie. His ability to kind of break out of the pigeonhole, I guess you could say, he was in, and show off what he was able to do in the noir genre was super, super great. 13, I have Scorsese's The Departed. This is one of the ones that I feel like I have to rewatch just to ensure. But there was so many characters that when they were on screen were just like it was like every single character was one that jumped off the screen to me.
Mhm.
So like even like Alec Baldwin and Mark Wahlberg were able to just like with their little screen time make an impact, and then you have Leo and Jack Nicholson and Matt Damon are all just carrying their weight just as evenly.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I have not seen The Departed in a long time, so I should definitely check that out again.
I definitely think it's worth a rewatch because it does not age poorly. I mean, it's not an older movie by any means, but I think it's one of those movies where I've watched it multiple times and I can enjoy it on each watch.
Hmm.
Number 12, just watched today, and like instantly fell in love with it. To see Akira Kurosawa like work with color and how beautiful the movie looked as a whole, I had to put Kagamusha on this list and nearly broke into the top 10. And if I think
Yeah,
about it, it very well could break into the top 10.
that's crazy.
Number 11, I go Autumn Sonata. That film is just so chillingly emotional. The family dynamics throughout that film.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's what prompted me to call Ingmar Bergman the master of dramatic tension.
His ability to do that, I honestly think, is second to none.
Yeah.
It was absolutely amazing.
That was also the final performance of legendary actress Ingrid Bergman, who was in Casablanca famously, and other projects as well.
And she was extremely phenomenal in that film and supremely effective as well. So
Yeah.
if you've got to choose one to go out on, that was definitely a great performance and a great movie.
Yes.
Number 10, I got Kill Bill Volume 2. As you're going to see, I prefer Volume 1 to Volume 2, but I still feel Volume 2 was a fitting conclusion to that duo of films.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you in preferring Volume One to Volume Two, but I I view them more as one film, but that's just my assessment of it.
And I think I might honestly change up the list and make it like that because it is really one story. But the violence in both is just so stylistically done. It's like if you like those action-packed scenes that are filled with violence, man, it's hard to see another movie that does it any better.
Yeah.
Number 9, I got Persona. We talked at great length about that, but it's quite frankly, a mind blowing film. So
Mhm.
I feel very comfortable having that in the top 10. Number 8, this as a character study and as a sports movie that kind of truly shows like the fully fledged highs and lows. It works just tremendously. That's Raging Bull, and it's one of the
Yes.
great performances in cinematic history by Robert De Niro and beautifully crafted by Scorsese. Number 7, I got A Clockwork Orange. You, I think, hit the nail right on the head. What it's able to say about society and how violence is bled into society, and the whole story is just super interesting and creatively done. And Kubrick
Absolutely.
nailed it.
Yes.
Number 6 is Full Metal Jacket. I recently rewatched the film, and I think I had it as like a 4 out of 5 stars. And the second half of that film grows on me every time I watch it, because obviously the first half is like just cinematic gold.
Perfection.
Exactly.
Perfection.
And the second half, it just every time it gets better after watching it. So that's what pushed it to a perfect 5 out of 5 for me. So
That's yeah, that's wild.
by far well, not by far, but it is my favorite war movie, and
Mhm.
but not my favorite Kubrick movie. Is That's going to be later on down the list, and that actually comes right now. So it's 3 Kubrick movies in a row.
In a
2000,
row.
2001: A Space Odyssey is my number 5. Some of those scenes are just some of the most beautiful scenes I've ever seen in cinema.
Yeah. I mean the wormhole Stargate scene is oh,
And,
how do you how do you top that? How do you top that?
and it was like even some of the landscape scenes are beautifully done. And it's like just really simplistic scenes, just how well crafted they were. It just blew me away, and they really stuck with me. Number 4, Kill Bill Volume 1. That's just it's such a kick-ass movie. I loved it from a young age, and again, the like if you like violence in movies, that is the best movie that does violence just perfectly.
Yeah, that was actually my first Tarantino movie was Kill Bill.
I think it was my first one too, because it was like the timing of it at my age. It was like I could start to watch movies like that at that time, so it was just perfect timing. So I think I'm right there with you.
Yeah.
Number 3 is kind of a movie that redefined the term magnum opus for me. Now, obviously, like 2001, that feels like a magnum opus, but Seven Samurai is one where you can clearly tell it's like this director poured everything into a film to try to masterfully craft something and make the ultimate samurai film. And I think that
Yeah.
was accomplished in Seven Samurai.
Yes. I have one of the more controversial takes in being that Seven Samurai is not one of my favorite Kurosawa. I prefer like High and Low. Ron, I love Ron, and also Yojimbo. But Seven Samurai is definitely one of the best films ever made.
That's one that I am in all likelihood going to watch this week, so I am just completely stoked about it.
If you loved Kagemusha, you're gonna love Ron.
That's what I like to hear. Number 2, this one is like the 1 and 2 are both like a sentimental pick that I do think are masterpieces, but it like really formed the type of movies that I like. And just as I was growing up, they were films that I watched like 10 plus times.
Yeah.
The first one being The Dark Knight. I thought like this was, if you like superhero movies, it's one that really transcends that and becomes greater than every single
Yes.
superhero movie ever.
Yes. Dark Knight is your number two.
Yes. I think Heath Ledger's performance was
Mhm.
just,
It's the role so good it killed him.
yep.
Is what I like to call it.
And I feel like it's something you can tell like that he just poured everything into. So, and unfortunately, did lead to the end of his life.
Yeah.
And number one, this is literally a movie. It's like if it's on TV, I'll watch it. I don't even care that it's edited. It's like the most rewatchable movie I think ever, and it stays consistently the most entertaining, despite having seen it 10 times already. And that is Martin Scorsese's Goodfellas.
Yeah. There's no beating the goat when it comes to gangster, like one of the goats when it comes to gangster movies. It is it's up there. It's definitely up there.
Ethan, I want to thank you for joining me today, man. And it was awesome to get to go through these directors and movies with you. Obviously, as I was saying, these are a lot of the movies you have on your list. I have to see now after seeing your list.
Hmm. Definitely need to rewatch The Searchers.
I think you'll enjoy it. And then also, like, I thought it was one of the prettiest movies I've ever seen, too.
Hmm.
Those vistas, I wouldn't like to live there, but the way John Ford was able to make them look does tempt you, I would say.
Hmm.
All right, well, that is all from us. Ethan, thank you again for joining me, man. This was a great conversation.
Of course.
And be sure to check out not only his letterbox, which is Film Junkie on Letterbox, but his YouTube channel, which, as we were saying before, he has the analysis of Chinatown, which, if you're a movie lover, which, if you're watching now, you clearly are, you will definitely enjoy that film. That is all for us again. I appreciate you joining us, and we will catch you on the Flippity Floop. Bye, y'all.